Ezekiel's wheel within the wheel. I don't even know what part this is. I do know this much, that it's, again, thousands of words and dozens of pages and thousands of hours of delving into things that Father has hidden, and I'm honored. Thank you, Abba. Thank you for revealing these things to your people. Thank you for loving us enough, Father, that you don't want us to perish. And thank you for loving us enough, Father, that you're willing to chasten us and chide us and provoke us to dig a little bit deeper. Amen. Most of you believe that we're living in the last days, and what we've been sharing for the last couple of times that I've been opening up and looking at this book of Ezekiel, you understand that there's been some things that were shown to us in this vision that Ezekiel had regarding the wheel within the wheel. The living creatures that were posited around that wheel in a specific design and a specific orientation. We looked at a little bit at the faces, the man of the face, the lion, the ox, and the eagle. You can see it here in Ezekiel. You can see it in the book of Daniel. You can also see it in the book of Revelation. You can go back and backtrack all the way into the book of Genesis, and you can begin to get some details and some insight. And what I've been trying to establish is a foundation for you to realize that what was being shown to Ezekiel was not only a calendar. And when we think of calendars, we think of something with the months and the weeks on it and the years and the generations, the decades. But it also, the calendar has to do with a daily lifestyle, hour and minute. And that calendar that Ezekiel was being shown was there to give the instructions that would be necessary for us to live on a daily basis. Now, by and large, if we're in a situation when life may be difficult and our lives may be hazarded if we make wrong choices, then you need minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day instructions. Say amen. And so what I've been trying to establish is a mechanism where that you can go back and see this vision and see how it connected not only with the construction of that calendar, but how it also overlay the tabernacle. And we've also examined our paradigm regarding the traditional way that the tabernacle would have been designed. It was not, in my opinion, based on this study, it was not designed to be rectangular or square in nature, but it would have been round, cyclical, because it would have had to fit a 360-day calendar, 12 months or 30 days. And we began to look at some other things that were embedded, hidden, if you will, in the secret places. And Father told us very explicitly that it's the glory of the King to hide things. It's the obligation of you as the people of God to search those things out. And if you're not willing to dig them things out, you are not honoring Him. Amen. Isaiah 11:12 says that in the last day, Yahweh is going to lift up a sign, a banner, a nest for the nations, and He's going to, in the process, gather. What do you think that sign might be? Something is going to be elevated and raised up so that the rallying cry around the nations can be lifted up, and it's going to cause, this ensign is going to be a rallying place. And I believe not only is it a place, a venue, but it will also have a time signature upon it. And the outcasts of Israel and Judah are going to be gathered from the, isn't it ironic? Four corners. The four corners of the earth. Could the four corners from which the outcasts are going to be gathered have anything at all to do with Ezekiel's vision of the four faces, which we've studied a little bit, and we understand that those four faces were four compass points, north, south, east, and west. Those faces were associated with that, and we saw that it had a connection to the cyclical nature of the signs in the heaven. And we understand that most of the people in the church community have been disassociated from that understanding because we've been taught that it was an astrological pagan mind that would look towards the heavens, when we can see from Genesis chapter 1 forward that Father wrote the message of the salvation plan in the stellar heavens. And we'd lost that, and now He's restoring that so that you could have a confirmation of the message written in the earth, written in the heavens as an indictment being served to you. So having laid the foundation for the last couple of hours that we were teaching on this, I want to look a little bit further, because we left off looking at Noah. And I showed you, I believe, where Noah was given some things, some insight regarding how the construction of the tabernacle will have been oriented. It had to do with the days and the calendars when Noah was told that there'd be 150 days that the water would be on the earth. 150 days is 5 months of 30 days. It's not an accident that those numbers were set into the Torah. And so I want you to look with me again in Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. And this is what Abba tells Noah. He says, while the earth remains, can I ask you a question? This is rocket science right here. It's going to be hard to answer. Is the earth still here? Is it? Then seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Now, when you just look at the Peshat level, which is just the beginning textual revelation there, you think that he's talking about planting and harvesting. The cold that comes from the winter, the heat that comes from the summer and the winter, and then, of course, day and night associated. That's all you can get if you're just willing to take what's being shown you on the surface. But if you understand that seed time and harvest, summer and winter, are attributable to the calendar positions that are seen in the equinox, spring equinox, fall equinox, and the solstices, which have to do with the summer solstice and the winter solstice. Do you see that? This is what he's telling Noah. He's not talking so much just about planting and harvesting winter and summer. He's given Noah some specific instructions because Noah was the only seed left on the earth. Noah's wife, 3 sons and their wives. They're the only seed of Yahweh left on the earth. And he's being given the same edict that Adam was. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, and have dominion. And he needs to have some strategic information about where he's at. And so Yahweh has a compass. He's given him some directions here with these words that I'm sharing with you, so he'll not only know exactly where he's located, because you can take a fixed position based on the stellar heavens, not only with the sun during the day, but the stars at night, and you can know exactly where you're at. Mariners, seafaring individuals for years have been able to do that. So this is what's happening to Noah. But you have to ask yourself, what does this day and night have to do with it? Does this also give us a clue regarding the proper reckoning of his calendar, which I believe was a cyclical calendar? Most people in the Hebrew roots will agree that Yahweh's word is cyclical, not linear. The Greek is linear. And so when you read this, most will stipulate to a hint that there's something regarding a 24-hour day period. But is that all? And I want to remind you of what Yeshua himself said in John 11, verse 9. He says, are there not 12 hours in a day? Now when you read this, you have to ask yourself, is he talking specifically, literally about 12 hours in the day? And then he goes on, if any man walks in the day, he doesn't stumble because why? He sees the light of this world. What is it that he's saying? Notice, he's just not casually, haphazardly putting things. He says, a man that walks in the day doesn't stumble. Why? Because he sees the light of the world. He didn't say the light of the day. He says, sees the light of the world. That's a catchphrase. Who's the light of the world? Yeshua. So something about Yeshua is going to be revealed to the man that walks in the day. Now, if you just look at it on the surface, it seems as if he's talking about somebody walking in the daylight, right? But there's more here. The 12 hours of the day would literally be true. They were literally, at the spring equinox, there's almost an equal division of the day into 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. And so what he's doing here is he's orienting his own people to a compass point. The spring and fall equinox would have oriented you perfectly to an east and west direction. And if you know where east and west is, then you of necessity will also know where north and south is. Am I right? And so if you understand that, you know that Yeshua is the day. He's also the light. He's the sun. And so it's only natural, listen to this carefully, it's only natural that Yeshua, the day, be divided or parsed out into 12 hours or 12 disciples. See, it's not an accident that Yahweh picked 12 disciples. So you see that? Each of those 12 disciples, representing an hour on the calendar of Yahweh, are responsible for carrying their individual light into their specific areas of influence. Can you see that? Now, it's not an accident. If you study the solar day, The solar day, based on Yahweh's calendar, begins at the month known as Nisan, when we start celebrating Passover, known as the first month of the year, right? The solar day ends 6 months, 6 months of 30 days, 180 days later at the Feast of Tabernacles, the solar day ends. Now, isn't it interesting that all 7 of the holy convocations, beginning with Passover and ending with the Feast of Tabernacles, take place during the day? And during the night, there's 2 festivals that are celebrated by most Hebrew roots and Jewish communities, and that's the festival of Hanukkah, which is the Feast of Dedication, when the light was conceived into the world, Yeshua. When he says, I am the light of the world, he's making reference to that time. And then there would have been another festival in the night, which would have been Purim. And there's a connection, because that word Purim comes from a root that literally means the rocks that have been broken or scattered. And there was another word there, goral, which literally means to take and pick lots and cast those lots. And so there's an indication that if you keep your focus on the Master during these 7 festivals of the year, you keep your eyes on him during the day, he's the light of the world who will instruct you and guide you throughout the dark hours or throughout the night seasons of the rest of the year. You see that? That's why you and I have been birthed out of the light. We have been called children of the light. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 5. Those 12 disciples, just like the 12 sons of Jacob, became a picture of the face of a clock. Each son or each tribe is associated with a specific sign. Did you know that? Each son of Israel, each son of Jacob, and each of the 12 disciples, go back and look at the construction of the tabernacle, of the New Jerusalem tabernacle, 12 gates, 12 stones, 12 disciples, 12 sons. There's a divine connection between each of those 12 tribes, 12 sons, and one of the 12 months of the year. The sign or the specific stone on the breastplate that would have been associated with that particular month. And each one of the months would have been associated with one of the 12 stellar houses or constellations in the heavens. Isn't that amazing? So I want to ask you a question. And again, you've been alienated from this understanding, and you've been taught anything that has to do with the zodiac or the birthstones are pagan in their nature. But I tell you that the pagans are wiser than the children of Yahweh, and they took the power that was associated with that, and they know how to use that for instruction. And the problem is that they worship the creation rather than the Creator. And Yahweh's turning this thing back around so that you can have the understanding that you need. I want to ask you a question. Is it possible that your particular birth sign and birthstone could have more influence upon your lives than you previously thought? No. But every one of us in here will freely acknowledge that every one of the sons of Israel, the 12 sons of Israel and the 12 disciples, were individually responsible for imparting light into the body of Messiah, just like you have been charged with imparting light into the body of Messiah. Am I right? I believe with all my heart that you are part. Each one of you may not be Jewish or Ephraimites or Benjamites or Danites, but like it or not, you were scattered out of the loins of Abraham and to the nations and to the 4 corners of the nations. And you may not know what your tribal affiliation is, but I dare say as you begin to look at some of the peculiar nature and characteristics and personality quirks that you have, you can begin to see that there are some things that may put you or point you in a direction of a particular tribal affiliation. Can you see that? No, nobody can see that. Wow, you guys are in trouble. Let me just share a fact with you about these birthstones. Each of the birthstones is crystalline in origin. That means that the birthstones have the ability to record sound. Now you know why Yeshua said, if my disciples are made to hush, then the very rocks will cry out. You thought that was an arbitrary thing. That if the disciples are told to be quiet because the Messiah is being identified as the Lamb who was slain from the foundation of the world, and if they are told to be quiet, then these rocks are just going to start singing. No, the rocks have been there since the inception of creation. They have recorded the word of Yahweh in them. They are the initial DVD that was recorded by the hand of Yahweh, the finger of Yahweh, from the inception of the earth. And so if the human crystals don't cry out, the rocks themselves will reveal the word of Yahweh. That's why he wrote on the crystalline tablets of stone with his very finger, and those stones literally had vibrational words and messages and frequencies in them that if you read what the Hebrew language says, it has the ability to affect you physiologically and change your very DNA. Is it possible that since those stones have vibrational frequencies, light, sound, by the way, sound, and it's an established scientific fact, sound is light slowed down. And so if the human body is crystalline in nature, I believe that we had a garment of light. We were clothed with a garment of light at one time. And I believe that as the transition took place between the Adam's fall and afterwards, that the blood became congealed light. And I think that this is a body of light that Yahweh's changing the nature of, and there's going to come a day when some of the limits, the physical limits that these bodies have seen over the years are going to change, and Abba's going to be able to pick you up and move you and put you in a place at a specific time. I don't know if I believe that. Elijah believed it. Enoch believed it, Moshe believed it, Obadiah believed it, Philip the evangelist believed it, Yeshua himself believed it, and Paul the apostle believed it. They were all picked up and translated. Ezekiel was translated. Can you say amen? And so is it possible that these birth stones associated with your birth month have the ability to facilitate energy in the form of healing, restoration, stress, and emotional relief? I'm not sure if I can grasp that. Did you know that inside your ear, raise your hand, take your index finger and put it right inside your ear. Did you know that inside your ear are tiny microscopic, you can take your finger out, tiny microscopic ear crystals deep inside the inner ear called otoconia? And their purpose is to establish balance, equilibrium, and motion. The reason you get motion sickness or vertigo is because those little crystals get out of place. And so you get dizzy and lightheaded. Still not impressed with the connection? The Hebrew word for ears is mozanim, plural. And it's translated balance or scales. It's not an accident that there is one of the 12 constellational signs called Libra. How many are familiar with Libra? Did you know Libra in Hebrew is mozanim? Libra is associated with the 7th month of Tishri at the close of the solar day. The 7th month is the season when we have Yom Teruah, Feast of Trumpets, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And it all corresponds with the season when the daylight of the year comes to an end. And it's interesting because the planet Venus is connected to Tishri and Libra. And in Hebrew, the word for Venus is Noga, which means, in Hebrew, the word for Venus is Noga, which means light. Its numeric value is 58, which is the same as the singular word ozon, which is ear, the root of mozanim, and it's also the root of the word hen, which means grace, which means you're favored by being obedient. You're not favored because you just called on to his name, because if you remain disobedient after calling on his name, the blessings are not going to come. Say amen right there. And so what we're talking about is proper balance. And it's interesting, if you know anything at all about the gestational cycle of the female, anybody in here would like to venture what month of the year that the fetus is able to hear? The first day of the 7th month, the day of blasting, the day of shouting, the day that the trumpet blast, that fetus is able to hear sounds outside the womb and properly distinguish what those sounds are. Strictly an accident. Strictly an accident. 58 is also the numeric value of the word Noah, who entered the ark during the month of Libra or Mosanim. The ark was a symbol of the womb or the tabernacle, the dwelling place of the seed of Yahweh. How many of you know that when Yahweh creates Adam in Genesis chapter 1, it says, and he creates him, male and female created he them. It's something that has kind of staggered scholars for millennia. You find in chapter 2 that Yahweh takes him and takes her out of him and makes two separate bodies. And so inside the man is a dual nature. And so Yahweh has to take the feminine attributes out of him and place him in front of him and call her Chava. She became the mother of all living. And when you take the two and put them back together and make them one, inside the one Adam is the ability to have masculine and feminine characteristics. Does that make sense? Yeshua and his bride are supposed to be one, echad, am I right? The tabernacle was designed in the form of the man, but the tabernacle could also represent the woman. When the man and the woman come together, Yeshua and his bride come together, you were designed to be the tabernacle of the Most High. You were designed for him to dwell in you. He didn't intend to dwell in a house made with physical hands. He created you so that he could dwell inside of you. And it's interesting because we were looking at the fact that Yahweh divides the day into night, and he divides it into 12, the day into 12 equal parts called hours, and the night into 12 equal parts called hours. And it's interesting, if you look at that word for hour in the Hebrew language, it's only translated that way, hour, in 5 places. It's translated in different ways as a parcel or a part of a specific season, but it's specifically translated hour in 5 places, and all 5 of those are in Daniel. Now, Daniel was a unique individual. Oh, it's almost a pun, wasn't it? Daniel was a eunuch who was unique. In fact, because Daniel did not have no descendants, Daniel had a treasure. And Daniel was also the chief instructor of the Chaldean astronomers. They would later on be referred to as the wise men who came to visit Joseph and Mary after the birth of their son. Joseph and Mary were so poor that they couldn't offer a lamb as a sacrifice. They had to offer turtle doves and pigeons, and all of a sudden you find them having enough money to relocate. It was because Daniel had instructed the Chaldean astronomers to take his inheritance that he had gleaned from the Babylonian captivity and hold that in reserve for 500 years, to when they saw the stellar message in the luminaries, they would take in their entourage, they would take the inheritance of Daniel and they brought it to the feet of Joseph and Mary. They bought gold and frankincense and myrrh to make sure that the king of creation had the inheritance that he would need to be spared from Herod. Do you see how powerful this message is? The word for hour there is sha'ah, and it means a moment in time, but it also indicates to look and to regard, to suspend something temporarily and to gaze about. And it's not an accident that Daniel was an astronomer, and Daniel called those individuals into a place where he could bring balance to the calendar of Yahweh. If Daniel had not brought balance to the calendar of Yahweh, your Messiah would have been in that group of young babies that was murdered by King Herod. Did you hear what I just said? Say amen. And there's one other individual who would have been murdered by King Herod that had not Yahweh intervened with his divine calendar, and it was Yochanan the Immerser, John the Baptist. John the Baptist was the true high priest in that day and time. There were 2 other individuals, Annas and Caiaphas, who had literally bought the position from the Roman government. They were not part of the house of Levi. They were not Kohanim. From that time forward, you begin to see an imposter occupying the priestly role, and that imposter is still occupying it by times today, and you need to know how to distinguish between the genuine and the counterfeit. Say amen. Or you can say, oh me. Let's look back at dividing the... Are y'all getting any of this? I'm working myself into a frazzle. I'm already getting hot up here. Back to dividing the day and night. Genesis 1, 4b and 5. And Yahweh divided the light from, I'm going to take a page from Pastor John's last teaching. I'm going to try and behave myself, if I can. Yahweh divided the light from the darkness, and Yahweh called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. This verse presents a conundrum to many of us if we don't understand the signs and the stellar luminaries, and so we wrestle over when the proposed day begins or when the night would begin. Why? It's because we don't understand that there's a solar day depicted in the heavenly pattern, and that solar day begins as the dark period of the 12th month of Adar ends, progressing towards the dawning of a new day, a new month known as the month of Nisan. That's why Moshe was told by Yahweh himself, this shall be the beginning of months. And so, following that evening and morning pattern, the solar day would end as the light dims further 180 days later during the 7th month of Tishri. And as it begins to dim, you have the dusk of the evening, and it leads into the 3-month dark period beginning at the autumnal equinox. Darkness settles upon the year during the last 3 months. And so what you find is that Yahweh's solar day, day and night, are divided into equal parts of 180 days, 6 months or 30 days, fulfilling or supporting the evening to evening reckoning of Genesis chapter 1. And it's interesting to look a little bit further at the word divided. It's the Hebrew word badal. Say that with me, badal. Say it again. Ooh, say it again. Listen to this. I want to just add, you've been taught that the darkness was ominous and forbearing. And in order to escape what was in the darkness, you could seek protection in a blanket pulled up to your nose. You ever thought about that? We've been taught that. But the word badal means to make a distinction and not necessarily a bad one. Yahweh's trying to distinguish the light from the day, and he has a specific reason for doing so. The root stem of badal is the dalet lamed. Dalet lamed. And it can mean something weak and emptied out. But it's interesting. Badal has a numeric value of 36, the same as the Hebrew word for tent, ochel. And the same as the word eleh, or Allah, to covenant, a terebinth tree. So there's something about the darkness and the tabernacle of Yahweh and his covenant that we need to understand. It says that he hides himself in thick darkness. If the darkness was bad, then why would Yahweh clothe himself in the thick darkness? Ask yourself these questions. It's all right. The truth can stand scrutiny.